you have some agency over the product or service. The problem itself, is not going to change until we actually solve it.
Hi, this is Tricia Ratliff. Welcome to my Innovation Podcast. I'm here with Jason Hall from Collaborative Structures in the Washington, D.C. area. Jason and I are here today talking about product ownership.
Awesome. Thank you, Tricia. Thanks for having me. I'm super excited to be here today and share my thoughts on product ownership, what that looks like, the differences in Delta from project management, where there are strengths and where there are opportunities for folks to grow in.
Yeah, so I have some questions, obviously, because the product owner role and product thinking are really an important shift. As a matter of fact, there was a product owner who once said to me, he realizes now that product ownership is the hinge on which the Agile or Scrum door turns. So take away that hinge.
Ooh,
Thought that was an interesting analogy. He
I
said,
like that.
take away that hinge and you still have a door. It's just harder.
It's just harder to open. Yeah,
Right.
it's really good.
Yeah.
I might steal that one.
Yeah, great. That was Ankit Goel who said that. Yeah, so tell me a little bit about some patterns and anti-patterns that you want to share when it comes to product thinking or product ownership. Is there anything that comes to mind that you think is an important topic for us to kick off on?
Yeah, I mean, I think where a product team or a product owner starts, I think is a good. I don't want to call it an anti-pattern, but I think oftentimes what I'll see if I come into an organization to help with, hey, coach these product teams on prioritization, or we've got a big initiative coming up, or a set of deliverables that haven't been delivered in the past. So help them help them do better. It's just kind of, I'll be given free reign to do whatever that means and sort of set free. But what I often find is that the product owner or I'd say the product team are starting kind of too far to the right. And so I often find it helps to reframe the understanding with the product owner and the product team on what the organizational strategy is. And when I say I mean at the very highest level, and then going all the way down to sort of where they are, and making sure that that connects, and that group that I'm working with, the product team, they understand the why for their existence, which sounds definitely, I know it sounds very kind of like high level or theoretical, but what oftentimes when they don't, when they're like, hey, well, we're just here to deliver X, or we're here to make sure that this thing doesn't go down. But when they don't really understand what's your organization really focused on, why do they exist, and what's their unique value proposition. When they don't understand that, then they obviously can't understand how they fit in. And what's not obvious is then they don't really have the effective means of prioritization.
Right.
That tends to be the missing piece. So honestly, one big anti-pattern, we want to talk about those, that I see is just using some type of sort of generic formula or a rack ordered or stacked list to validate your prioritization decisions. Like, hey, if we just put these in order, then that's the highest priority. Like that doesn't, yes, that's a great order, and that might be good for some low level tasks, but that does not tell you why that order exists. And that's only good for right now, because we all know prioritization lists change a bunch. But the underlying model for your heuristic, what you're using to make those prioritization decisions, that actually, when you get down to it, and when you understand how it connects to kind of organizational strategy, where you are in the market, et cetera, those things are a little bit more durable. And I think those are more effective means of prioritizing.
So what are some of the activities that a product owner can do to get to that? So imagine for a moment, I'm a new product owner and I'm really completely new at the job. And I heard your advice and it makes sense to me. I say, yeah, I need to communicate to the team and also refresh for myself with my stakeholders the why behind what we're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. So there are a number of things, and starting with the solution, one of the things that I easiest for people to grasp is they might have been given a set of initiatives to say, hey, we need to go build X, or we need to replace legacy version X, Y, and Z with soon to be legacy version QRT. They'll be given some large initiative, and I'll have them map that in any one of the number of sort of framing canvases, a product canvas or a value proposition canvas, or even a lean canvas, any one of those, I'd say sort of modern canvases. What they do is they get you to extrapolate up and think about all the aspects of the thing that matters. You're forced to ask yourself, oh, okay, well, who are we doing this for? Who are the customers? And when I say customers, right, it doesn't necessarily mean externally facing, but those could be internal customers too. And what problems are we aiming to solve for them? Right. So it forces you to think about the complete aspect of, and why this solution, why now, how are we going to deliver it? It forces you to really think about all those aspects of the thing and go back up to the thing that matters, or the thing that you may not understand. And usually what I often find is the thing that they don't understand is, what customers are they talking about? And they'll say, oh, this is for all of our employees. Okay, well, that's not that's the same as an external user saying, well, this is for any potential user on the web. That's not a customer. That's not descriptive enough to be helpful. What segment are you focused on, right? Because I find if you're not really, really focused on a particular area, even to start, it makes it really hard to prioritize. It makes it hard to do trade-off decisions, and it makes it hard to actually to rally people around what they're actually going after, because it's too ubiquitous. Or it might even be all new. This problem we're aiming to solve is for new hires for the first 30 or 60 days. Then it helps you really understand, because now then I can ask more questions. I can start to frame that understanding. Okay, well, what problem do these new hires have? I can go out and I can get qualitative and quantitative data on that. And now I can walk my team through this chartering or discovery process to unpack what things should we be doing to focus on. And then now the priority becomes, hey, we're, now once we figured what that is, hey, it turns out after we did a little bit more discovery, this problem that new hires are having on the X day of their employment causes the biggest impact. And so therefore, this is the highest priority. Notice how the priority of upgrading legacy version X to Y, notice how that changed, language changed from, well, that's not the priority. The priority is solving this particular problem that new hires have within their first 60 days. And we're going to do that through, doing X, Y, and Z. That X, Y, and Z may change, as many of us in agile delivery or in agile organizations. What we know is, we experiment, we try, we build, we measure, we learn, and we sort of pivot. So what we actually do might change, but the problem itself, is not going to change until we actually solve it.
So Jason, coming back to the product owner, if someone were previously a program manager, a project manager, or maybe a task lead or in a different role, and they're now being invited into the product owner role, how might they know? So if it were me, how might I know if I have what's needed to be a successful product owner? And then what do I need to know about the role in order to succeed?
Yeah, absolutely. So, if you're brand spanking new to this, you definitely are probably going to need some level of orientation. And, there are many training classes. I won't recommend any in particular, but there are quite a few out there, for, new product managers or new product owners that do a really great job of kind of helping define what those responsibilities are. And so I think that is key. There can be consternation about prescribing training as a way of transformation. Training of itself won't do anything, but it's just it's the starting point, because you need to know what you don't know, right? So, what I described about, walking a product owner through a particular canvas, that's an actionable thing. But then if it's not going to be helpful if they don't know, oh yeah, by the way, you should be also concerned with the sustainability of your product. You should also be concerned with not just the customer, but how does this solve a business need? How is this feasible within the business area? You should also be concerned with, is this technologically feasible? Does our organization have the technological capabilities to do this? What does it say in the market, et cetera? There's all these other things that you should know that you should be thinking about, even if you know, hey, I don't have the skills to really uncrack that. I think that's okay, right? Like, hey, I don't have a marketing background. I don't know how to do market sizing, or I don't know how to do, if I'm thinking about external for products people, I don't know how to do pricing or go to market strategies, which is actually relevant for internal and external product people. That's fine as long as you're aware of this is what that responsibility toolkit looks like. That's a great starting point, because then you can always seek out help. You can always seek out, okay, well, who else knows these things, or how can I get really smart in this particular area at this time?
So as long as they're willing to learn and recognize the gap.
Yeah, as long as they're willing to learn and recognize the gap. Or they may say, oh, these are all the responsibilities of what it takes to be a product. I don't want to do this role. That's not me. And I think that's fair too, right? Then you have a choice to make, and the organization that you're in has a choice to make.
Mhm. How much technical knowledge do you think a product owner needs to have?
Yeah, so that totally depends on the domain that they're in. A product owner for a developer solution. So you look at, there's many tools out there to help developers, right? Like if I was a product owner for some delivery tools within GitHub's repository, of course I have to be really technical. I'm probably going to be a developer, a former developer myself. You just can't pass the muster with not having technical acumen in that space. Conversely, a product owner for a shopping cart experience, for any grocery delivery store or any type of e-commerce delivery store, may not have to be as technologically savvy. So it really depends on the domain that you're in.
Well, that's a perfect segue to a different kind of product ownership or value stream ownership, which is there are plenty of people who are tasked with ordering the backlog of Kanban teams.
Mm-hmm.
And those teams might be a security team, an infrastructure team, a team that's working in desktop support. That's a different kind of backlog, but they certainly own delivering value. What thoughts do you have about product ownership of that type of backlog?
Yeah, absolutely. So they're like service owners, right? They kind of own a particular service. I'd probably say the key distinction between stepping into the product career track, product owner, product manager, director, et cetera, versus kind of just being a project manager, is that you have some agency over the product or service that you are in control of. And so what I mean by that is, right, if I'm a manager or an owner of network infrastructure or network firewalls or et cetera, and I can't affect that product, I can't change, hey, right now our service does this, and I think it should do that. If I can't change that, affect that in any way, and like just on the product side, if I'm the owner of a shopping cart experience, but I can't actually do anything to change, I'm just prioritizing tickets based on what people are telling me, then I'm not a, whatever you want to call it, I'm not a product owner. You are unfortunately just sort of a project manager. And so then the onus on the why and the justifications don't belong with you, they belong with somebody else. Right.
Mm.
So I think that's the sort of the key distinction. And by the way, whether someone's doing Kanban or Scrum, to me, none of that matters. None of that affects whether or not you are a product or project owner. So, for example, I'm the service owner, I'm the product owner over our firewalls. Do I have the ability to understand, hey, we have a core set of new developers it always takes them 90 days to get onboarded because they've got to make all these requests to get their tools added to, a whitelist or whatever. Oh, well, that's something I want to improve that developer experience. And, I have agency to shape that. So here's what we're going to do within the service that I want to do these things differently so I can affect a different outcome. Right. So I think that's a key distinction. That's a sort of product ownership mentality, as opposed to, oh, I got this request, I'm going to do this one because it just came in earlier. I'm going to do that one because it came in later. So those are I think are key distinguishing factors between, say, just being a ticket taker or a
Mhm.
product owner or product manager.
if an organization's goal is for all the teams to be more collaborative, more responsive, high performing, delivering on the mission, able to benefit from a feedback loop.
Yeah, yeah.
So if they're looking for some of those things that Agile typically provides, but they're agnostic about whether it's Agile or not, they just want to be a high performing team so that they are able to do their very best work, maybe focus, maybe they like
Mhm.
the idea of focusing so that value is delivered. Transparency, they may value transparency. Do they need a product owner?
Yeah, honestly, maybe, maybe not. I think that, I think this is great. The kind of question you're pitching is awesome. And it's one that, as an external coach, product coach, or business agility coach who's come in and say, hey, help this organization kind of be more agile. One of the things I often do is work with the leaders who brought me there to translate what that means. And so digging one layer, like we want them to be more collaborative. And I'll go, okay, great, great. Well, what are you seeing right now? Why do you feel like they're not collaborative? And what I'm really trying to do is get at some way of benchmarking the thing that they're trying to get after, even if that becomes a qualitative survey, which I have done before. It was with a marketing organization a while ago to say, hey, we want, and they had that was one of the sort of measures they were trying to improve at was kind of high trust and collaboration. I said, well, what does that look like now, and how do we know if we do anything that it's improved? So let's just take a benchmark survey right now, use some type of Likert scale to just assess what the level of trust is now. Then now at least I can go, okay, great. Well, we think there's low trust because X, Y, and Z. Why don't we do these things? But now I have something to go back and say, great, we're in a quarter. We tried this different way of working. Now let's go back and reassess how that computes against our previous assessment. To me, I think that's important because oftentimes what I find is, the once we figure out the thing that really matters, we might try a lot of different things. Some of them might have to do with quote unquote, agile ways of working or not, and some of them may not. Like product management, for example, doesn't really care how you do. You can do great strategic thinking and execution very well, but then deliver it in some non-agile fashion. And so I think they solve two different problems. So you're really got to be like, okay, well, what problem are we trying to solve? And that way I can be open, I can be flexible to go, okay, well, this is, I may not, doing this work, doing this type of thing, it might make my skin curl, but that's what the team wants to do. And as long as they're understanding of this is the thing that we're trying to measure to see to get better, and if it gets better, then great. They'll go on and work that way. If not, then maybe they'll be open to something different.
So if I come from a background of having been trained as a project manager, so
Mm-hmm.
I'm accustomed to thinking in terms of developing a plan, reporting on the plan, scope, schedule, cost, maybe even leadership in terms of management and control.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the mental shifts you would encourage me to make? So what are some of the big things that you would say you absolutely, would need to let go of in order to lead a team and create a more collaborative, high performing team that's getting feedback, responding to that feedback and changing what we deliver based on what we're learning from our experiments or the feedback loops?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest mental hurdle that many project managers struggle with is getting rid of the illusion of certainty that delivering exactly what we had to deliver is the thing that we want. And there's been recent kind of scientific evidence to show that, well, that doesn't come from anywhere, that there's something that's baked into our kind of mental wiring that just says it feels good to deliver a big thing. Like we were planning for something, we're delivering it. So ironically, there is some might be like emotional benefit to just delivering thing, regardless of not of whether it had the impact that you were trying to make. So while that emotional feel good thing may feel good in the moment, it doesn't really last, and it doesn't really create the type of sort of winning formula that the sustaining successful organizations have. So the biggest shift is really, honestly, is really changing what things that they value as a project manager, right? Because they've been conditioned for so long to make sure that something gets delivered on time. They haven't really been conditioned to care about more the outcomes that it's supposed to drive. So a lot of that changes with them, but a lot of that changes with the organization that they're in, right? How are those project managers incentivized? Because if I'm continually incentivized to reward project managers who've delivered on time the most, then guess what? No matter what I call them, that's what they're going to continue to do. But if I change that incentive structure and I say, hey, you know what, now we're going to start looking at, let's go back to the example of the new developer or new employee experience that I mentioned, right? And I'm pulling from some sort of realistic examples here.
Well, we can go with that because just about every organization has new employees come on board.
As they have
Many
new
have
employees come aboard.
developers.
Yep.
They need their laptop, they need their phone, they need their tech, and
Yep.
they need it to work. And whatever problem they're having, an existing employee who's been there for years may have the same problem when they get a new one or when they have software updated. So there's some common problems to every organization there. So go ahead and
So
assume.
yeah, so organizationally, right, I have to sort of shift even as a leader who is over a bunch of project to hopefully product owners. I have to shift the thing that I care about. I have to go, okay, well, what's the thing that I'm talking the most about? Is it about delivering X and all the different, initiatives on our roadmap? Or am I talking about, real tangible progress of, hey, the last quarter surveys of our new developer experience are out, and we've improved the time to first commit, right? That might actually be a real measure, meaning time it took new developers to make their first commit of code. We've improved that from, I don't know, 30 days, I'm just making, 20 days to 10. That's monumental, right? That's money saved, and that's value add. That adds to the bottom line because now those teams can be more productive, can serve earlier, right? Do I celebrate that? And do I reward the teams that do that? Or am I still rewarding who delivered on time and scope, right? So the shift has to happen in two places, not just with the individual, but also with the organization and those leaders that they're in or under.
I love this example and the way you're framing it because we can empathize with people who are in those positions.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's an important topic that we need to discuss here. It is that when you own outcomes, I'm sure you can empathize. I can certainly empathize. Those project managers may feel that, wait a second, that's a lot. I
Mm-hmm.
can focus on a schedule. I can see if we're on time or not. I can report on what's going wrong and what's going right. I can do my dashboards. That I know. But if you ask me to own the outcome, not me, Trisha, but let's say we're
Mm-hmm.
empathizing with these project managers, they may feel like that's a lot to own because there's so many intangibles, so many other organizations to collaborate with. And what I would say there is if you own the outcome in the sense that psychologically you're caring about the why, and if something is outside of your purview, that we simply say that. Here's something that I think is important to happen for us to be effective. It is outside of my purview.
Mm-hmm.
And I respect this other organization's choices that they're going to have very high security standards. And that means that it's going to take me 30 days before anyone can do their first commit,
Mm-hmm.
right? To just be able to state it in a positive way. There's something there for project managers to shift to that mindset of I'm trying to own the outcome here, but I don't have to be in charge of everything.
Mm.
And it's
Yeah.
okay to just point out where the impediments are without mischaracterizing other people. What do you think about some of that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, the hard thing that it's do is this, or the hard thing for them to do, but the thing that's needed is be a little bit more comfortable with uncertainty, especially further out. I definitely I get understanding in working in a matrix organization where if you have a lot of dependencies or teams relying on you for things, you have to say like, hey, in order for you to do X, we have to deliver this API service, or we have to, we've got to open these firewalls by that date. Or I get that is needed. So nobody's just saying like, hey, we just talked about outcomes till we're blue in the face. But I'm saying that there's some level of give. If I'm in quarter one, looking at quarter four and saying, here are the 25 things that we're going to do, and then what order is you need to, you possess a high level of hubris to think that that's going to happen like that, and that is the thing of ultimate value. So where the shift is keeping not just yourself, but keeping the teams and the folks that you work with, other teams, aware of what key problems are we trying to solve, and giving them agency to make just in time decisions to solve those. So right in quarter four, I might say, hey, quarter four, we're onto a different problem. Quarter four, we're going to focus on making this particular experience better. And yeah, maybe here are a couple of things that we think we might do, but I'm gonna pencil in and put an asterisk there. And what I'm really saying is, hey, to the teams below, like when you get to that point, you're gonna be doing discovery up to that point. You are likely gonna have very different answers and very different solutions, and that's okay. As long as we know this is the thing that we're trying to solve, and this is how we know that thing is solved. Right. So that is a huge shift for project managers to make. I don't, I don't, I'm not going to belittle that or make that seem like it's smaller than it is. It really is monumental. And some project managers make it and some don't. Some just kind of stay in that kind of rank order Gantt chart mindset, because that's the thing that they like.
Well, I find that where one might stumble in that transition is that the organization around the person is asking for status and
Mhm.
expecting the kind of status that they got previously. So how do you help them answer the question of what's the status? What's the update?
Mhm.
How do I show that the team is, quote, making progress? What are some ways that you do that?
I coach them to coach. That is a very, very sort of common scenario. Like, hey, these folks get it, but the rest of the organization has not also made the leap with me. So I coach them to coach. Okay, well, when you're asked for the status of something in a year out from now, don't give it. Redirect the conversation. Say, hey, well, I can tell you for certainty this is what we're doing now, but here's why I won't give you that answer. And to have an elevator pitch about why that is, it's a fool's errand to try and list the status of 85 different things that happen a year out. Keep doing that until the kind of organization gets. I was with another organization where something similar, where they had been giving roadmaps that were basically just big initiative lists, and we had to worked with them to sort of reframe their value system and reorder what things that they're really trying to solve, and then also reframe their messaging upwards. And it was it was a shift that they were able to successfully make and say, hey, this is next quarterly meeting, or QBR, instead of a initiative pack roadmap, it's going to look a little bit different. We're going to have this quarter, you hear the initiatives like you're used to seeing, but now we have, here's the reason we're doing this, by the way, just FYI. We never shared that before, but here it is. And then now what they see in quarter 3 and 4 are fewer initiative lists or none, and just saying, hey, we're focused on this particular problem here. And believe it or not, sometimes you don't get any pushback. People are just used to the status because that's what you've been giving them. You haven't really given them an option or anything else to ask for. So you've got to show them a different way or a different path.
How might the person in this role respond when leaders come to them with additional initiatives to weave into the work that they're currently doing? So they're effectively asking the team to context switch.
Yeah, I think that's happened. That's sort of common. I think the role of this is not just a product, any product manager, is to constantly balance priorities and other stakeholder requests. A stakeholder is going to always ask for the moon and the stars. That you're never going to get them to not ask for stuff. But it doesn't mean you have to take everything in. there's all sorts of clever ways of saying no, right? There's the like, hey, well, of the list of 30 things that you gave me, help me understand what things are really important right now. So you're getting them to prioritize their things. There's the, hey, yes, you've given me all these things. By the way, I want to communicate. Here's our roadmap, right? And so what you're saying is, do you see, if you don't see your stuff on there, that's not prioritized. And it can go one or two ways. They're going to be upset, and sometimes you win. I'm going to say, okay, I understand. I can't do that right now. And sometimes you lose, right? They go over your head and they go to your manager and they say, hey, we need to do X, Y, and Z. And so really it's up to sort of communicating what those trade-offs are if it comes down to doing this thing over that.
So understanding that context switching will cause a specific disadvantage.
So that I think that's probably I think I answered a different question. So yeah, constantly switching back and forth between a number of different things without actually having delivered anything to begin with. Yes, you end up losing, you lose capacity because you're just sort of task switching. I have never seen that effectively eliminated, but I have seen it minimized. Right. When I say eliminated, I mean like there's no more. We've locked the quarter down, or we've locked the. Well, I have seen people lock a week or two down. That's reasonable. But we've locked the quarter down, and this is all that we've taken. That I don't see that happen, but I have seen you can minimize that. In other words, say, hey, yeah, we had to take one or two things we weren't planning, but for the large part, 70 or 80% of the stuff that we ended up working on are things that we committed to at the beginning. So I think that takes a team and that takes a system. No one person can do that, right? So that's a structure of, we have an organization that respects. We're going to work within these boundaries, whether they're arbitrary or not. Hey, every 2 half moons, that's when we do planning. Okay, great, right? And then that's the organizational understanding of when we can get things in, right? Or every 3.5 weeks. Okay, then great. That's the organizational understanding of when things can come in and change. So some of that is kind of up to an individual. A lot of it isn't. Some of it is up to the system that they're in.
Is there anything else you feel like we should have talked about that's important to product ownership or effective high performing delivery?
Yeah, I don't know if it's, we definitely should have talked about it, but it's just probably something I want to put out there is don't beat yourself up too much. This is for a product owner. There's always going to be something that you could be better at, or there's always going to be, there's a whole list of product management competencies that we definitely don't have time to get into. But once a product owner or a product manager understands what they are, they may quickly realize like, oh, I'm only doing one of these really well. I'm only doing 2 or 3 of these really well. Nobody is going to be well-rounded in all 3 or 4, or all 7 or 8 or whatever, however many of the competencies there are. So don't beat yourself up about it, but have a plan to, well, what are you going to improve on? What things do you want to tweak or make better? And then I think just congratulate yourselves on the things that you're actually doing well. So yeah, I definitely know as kind of coaches and advisors, sometimes we can be a bit too, be a bit too sort of critical, because I know we want our clients to be the best that they can be. But it definitely take time to understand what you're doing that's working, what's working well, and celebrate those things.
Jason, thank you so much. It is always a pleasure to talk to you, and it was great to have you here today.
Trisha, thank you for having me. It is definitely always a pleasure to talk with you as well.
You're welcome.
I enjoy it.
You're welcome, of course.